My name is Joshua Strange, and I want to start with, it's going to be kind of a running mental image for everyone. I remember the day where I first got accused of sexual assault at Auburn. It was my ex-girlfriend who was accusing me, and I had no idea what to do. And I always tell people that when the accusation came across to me and they told me about it, it was as if I had somehow wound up at the bottom of this pit, and all around you is just darkness. It's just completely black, except for the light of one match that's in your hand, and that match is burning. And that's all you can see. And it's just you by yourself, cold, dark, and alone. And you're trying to figure out where to go next. You're trying to put one foot in front of the other, just trying to go day to day and make it through and just somehow find the light at the end of the tunnel. And that's how it went. That was the world that I lived in. When I was at Auburn, and even before Auburn, I was always the guy who just had a very large group of friends. I loved hanging out with people. I wasn't really a dater. That just wasn't my prerogative, I guess. I just wanted to have a large group of friends and just hang out with pretty much everybody. And that's what I did until this accusation came across. I used to walk across Auburn, and just going from one building to the next, I'd run into 20 or 30 people that I knew. I was in a fraternity. I was having the time of my life, literally. And then I got accused, and I watched all of that disappear. It was as if I turned into a leper. People didn't want to have anything to do with me. My fraternity removed me from my position. I was the chaplain of my fraternity, and here I am accused of rape. They removed me from my office. They put me on inactive status. My friends who weren't all that close to me abandoned me. I found myself, kind of sitting in my apartment by myself most nights, just trying to figure out what to do next. But I did retain a core group of friends, which is what really got me through. But I didn't really want to go anywhere. It was really hard for me to go to campus because just walking across campus, people would start to stare at you. They'd point at you. You'd see them whisper something to their friends. I remember there was a Chick-fil-A on campus in the student center, and I went there. I had about an hour between two of my classes, and I figured, well, I'll get some lunch so I'm not hungry in my next class. And I was standing in line, and there were these two sorority girls standing in front of me. And one of them turns to the other one and says, "Oh, did you hear about that Josh Strange guy?" And I'm standing right behind him, and the other one says, "No, what happened?" And she said, "He raped some girl in Sigma Kappa sorority a couple of months ago." And oh, I had no idea about that. Oh man, what a freak, what an ass. And I'm standing right behind him, and I went home. I jumped out of line. I went home and just sat in my room and didn't know what to do. And that was a day-to-day thing for me. And then it came down to the hearing. Walking into that room on that morning and seeing they had hung a black sheet between my accuser and myself in the middle of the room, so I couldn't see her, so I couldn't, quote, cause her any more distress. And seeing the panel of 5 people up in front of me, which was a fisheries professor, a professor of liberal arts, a male student, a female student, and then the chairman of my panel, which was a librarian from the Auburn Library. Those were the 5 people who were getting ready to determine my educational and even career future. My entire life boiled down to a 4.5-hour hearing, and that was it. And I remember walking into the room and just this black cloud, as if it couldn't get any darker than it already was. It got a lot darker, really, really quick walking into that room. And I just remember thinking, this is not going to end well. This is not going to be good. This is going to hurt. And we sat in there for 4 hours, 4.5 hours, however long it was. Trust me, I had no concept of time at that point. I just wanted it to be over. And I was so nervous, I couldn't even tell you my own name when I first walked in there. And yet here I am expected to defend myself. It was basically next to impossible. At the conclusion of the hearing, when we were getting ready to hear the panel's findings, so to speak, just this sick feeling was just constantly there with me, and I was sitting there listening, and I heard the words, "We find you in violation of the Auburn Student Code of Conduct and we recommend that you be expelled. And that's what I heard. And I said, okay. And I stood up with my attorney, and we exited the room, and I kind of went black for a minute. I think I might have blacked out for about a minute or two. And we walked over to my family, and I looked at them, and here's the university that I had always wanted to go to since I was 6 years old. You know, no rhyme or reason to it, just wanted to go to Auburn, wanted to be a Tiger. And I looked at my parents and my friends who were there and said, they don't want me here. I'm gone. That's it. And they started talking amongst themselves, and I just kind of, I think somebody asked me a question, and I just kind of looked at them and shook my head and turned around and walked out, and just walked out the door. And went and sat on a bench and tried to figure out what to do next. And I want to take you back to that well that you're in, or that dark place that you're in with the match. When that expulsion was mentioned, it was as if something ran up and blew that match out. And now it's just you in the dark by yourself, not knowing which way's up, down, left, right, where the door is, where the exit is, where the light is. That light didn't exist anymore. And that's the world that I lived in for years. This all happened back in 2011, 2012, and here it is, 2015, and I'm still trying to get over it. It's never going to go away, and it's always going to be a cross that I'm going to have to bear. It's extremely painful, and knowing that all of my friends that I retained from Auburn, they're going to get to go back and go to alumni tailgates and alumni events and football games, and here I am, odd man out. My best friends in the world, I can't go tailgate with them. I can't set foot on campus. I can't go back to my fraternity house. I can't go see any of my friends because they don't want to have anything to do with me anymore, most of them. And I've had to somehow figure out how to deal with that. And it's just this sickening, sickening feeling, trying to just move on and go day to day. And I've heard my thoughts echoed in everyone that I've spoken with. I speak with young men who are going through this almost on a weekly basis, and those are just the ones that are reaching out to me to speak. And it's a constant feeling that we all share, and we don't know what to do. Thankfully, I can give them a little bit of advice and try to prepare them for it so that it doesn't hit them quite as hard as it hit me. It kind of softens the blow a little bit when you can tell them. But at the same time, the hardest part of what I'm doing right now is having to say over the phone to someone, your life is getting ready to get this much harder, or it's getting ready to, your collegiate life is getting ready to end. And that's one of the hardest things that you ever have to do, because some of these guys, that's the only school they wanted to go to, just like me with Auburn. That's all I wanted to do. And I have to tell them that your school is getting ready to reject you, and you're going to have to find a way to be okay with that, because there's not that much that you can do to stop it. And it's a constant battle. It's getting a lot better nowadays, thankfully. I can kind of stand up here and be able to do this kind of thing now, and it's helps me in a way, but it's also really hard because, you know, you immediately go right back to that place, and you start thinking about it again, and you start remembering all the feelings and all the emotions and just the despair. But it does start to get a little better, but it will never be okay for the rest of my life. And like I said, it's a cross I'm going to have to bear forever. And it's not one that I would wish on anyone. It sucks pretty bad, but it helps knowing that I'm not the only one going through it, but at the same time, I don't want them to. And so that's why I'm here. And thank you very much.